Welcome to Superlative. I am your podcast host, Ariel Adams. In each episode, you will meet someone who has inspired or takes inspiration from today's wristwatch industry. Every week, let's dive deep into the world of crafting exotic timepieces, from the people who dream them up to the people who dream of them. It's time to get started and meet today's guest. Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with Superlative Podcast. My guest today is Marie-Laure Trichard. She is the Global Marketing and Communication Director of Bell & Ross in Paris. Marie-Laure, welcome.
Thank you, Ariel. I'm very glad to be with you today.
I am also excited to speak with you because Bell & Ross has been a brand that I have been looking at for a very long time. Before I started aBlogtoWatch, before I was it all involved in the watch industry, I was a watch lover. And Bell & Ross, in the early 2000s, was the brand that really captured my attention. I, of course, found them beautiful. I, of course, later learned a lot more about them. But, you know, and I'm just trying to paint a little scene for everyone. More than 20 years ago now, in the late 1990s, Bell & Ross was produced by Zinn. A couple of smart guys in France who had a good design sensibility and knew watches, went to the German watchmaker Zinn and said, hey, make some watches for us. And that's actually how the brand got started. A few years after that, they decided to take their success and make their own watches. And ever since then, they've been a very interesting type of watch brand, which has tried to pull inspiration from all over the place, as well as one of the few watch brands that has a real sense of in-house design, not just in-house watch design, but in terms of branding and things like that. I've gotten to know Carlos Rocio, who's the co-founder, as well as many others on the team over the years. And it's a brand that just has so many good stories with it. Maybe I'll ask you, Marie-Laure, what initially attracted you to the Bell & Ross company?
The uniqueness of the brand, you know, when I dive into it, it's really, you know, it's really so, because you say, you know, there are lots of inspiration, but the key inspiration about the brand is really this main universe, you know, and mainly about aviation and all this military background. And when you look at the brand, there is this very strong consistency, you know, in the brand story, in the brand image. And I'm very sensitive, you know, to the brand and the uniqueness. And that's what I like to work on. So that's really what attracted me, you know, like at first, you know, like joining Bell & Ross.
Now, there's something about Paris, French, of course, in general, but Paris, which knows how to make brands. Many places know how to make good products and you know, good designs, but there's something about Paris where people there understand almost implicitly what makes a good brand. And I'm just curious from your perspective, what is the Parisian definition of a luxury brand?
That's very good question. You know, I would say it's a mix of a strong DNA, uniqueness with a very much focus on details, consistency, the brand story, and a lot of creativity as well.
It's also a lot of imagery, isn't it? I noticed that, you know, visual merchandising is a term which, of course, is very popular in Paris, and that is essentially the look and feel of a store. But the extension, the advertising, the websites, Bell & Ross, I think, compared to many other companies, has always had so much more of an emphasis on the visuals. Is that just a Paris thing? Is that related to Carlos, you know, and other founding people there? Talk a little bit about the emphasis on the visuals as much as the product itself.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's really from the birth of the brand, because, you know, like it's Carlos and Bruno actually is a designer. He's the one on the one side designing the watch, but as well is a creative director. So he has a very clear idea on the brand expression. Of course, it does evolve over time, you know, because it's linked, you know, like to the time. But that's really something, you know, that is central to him, and he's, you know, like in a way, would say the brand owner, the person who has really all that in mind and is very focused, on details and how the brand should express. And you will find, like this idea of being, like minimalist and modern, viril, all these things, like the mix of design, yet with this aviation inspiration. And that's a mix of all of that has been very consistent over time and very, and he has a very high attention into details. And I think that what does make, like the brand, like so unique and so consistent as well is that because, since the beginning, you have the same person who has been driving the brand image. And that's quite unusual in our days, I would say.
I want to tell a little story because I remember the first time that Carlos told me this story, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense for the discussion we're having about the formation of the brand and this sense of aesthetic. So Carlos Rocio, as you said, is the sort of business mind, and Bruno Bellamich is the designer. And the name of the brand, Bell and Ross, Bell from Bellamich and Ross from Rocio, is part of that. And then the logo, where you have the Bell and Ross term with the "and" in the middle, and it actually is meant to look like a watch. Or even the B from Bell is meant to be like the pin at the and buckle at the end of the strap. And there's this almost insane, actually, amount of focus on this consistency and creating the look and feel of the brand as well as the product. And again, from the beginning, you could see these little details. I'm sure there's other little details that maybe I haven't even noticed. Any come to mind?
Yeah. So what is like very interesting about this name is on the one side you have like this name that sounds and look timeless, and sometimes people like I've met people who didn't really know the birth of the brand, and they were thinking that that was like an American brand. So it looks like that's something interesting, because what's sometimes a bit of a challenge with French brands is that they have a French pronunciation, which can be a very big challenge traveling around the world. And here with the Bell and Ross, actually, it sounds very international. So you have on the one side, the French background imagery, but on the other side, the traveling name, and you start, even with my name, for instance, which is kind of a challenge to travel,
No, but it's a smart thing to do. I mean, Rolex, in a little bit different way, is the same thing. It was a term that Hans Wilsdorf came up with to sound good, as you said, in multiple languages, so it could be easily pronounced. I mean, I think this shows a little bit how even from the beginning, Carlos and Bruno were thinking about what we call now a 360 approach, right? Not just a nice product, but the logo, the look and feel. Why are we even doing this? And I think one of the most interesting moments of Bell and Ross history to me, and I'm jumping around here, of course, is the release of the BR5 watch. Because every watch before it was inspired by some type of thing outside of the watch world, a cockpit instrument, diving gear, something in a car. And now the BR5 is inspired by other Bell and Ross watches.
Absolutely.
Right? Interesting.
Yeah, actually, you're perfectly right. It means that, like the birth was really about this passion for aviation. And you had first, like you have all these round watch really, like more the pilot watch. And then there was this move into the inspiration from the cockpit with, like the BR1, BR3, which is really a piece of the cockpit put on the wrist. And then you're absolutely right. When they moved to, like the BR5, the inspiration was actually, this shape that is very unique to Bell and Ross that we call the round in a square. And to keep, like this unique shape that makes the brand so recognizable, and very unique. And to give it, a bit more of a urban, like a design. And that's actually the BR1 that turns into, or BR3 that turns into a BR5, which make a very unique family. Still, inspired by the cockpit, but with really, like this twist and making it more of a jewel. So you're right, it's a kind of a move, but still in the background, you still have, in the background, this instrument and, aviation and professional that is behind, but turning to the city.
I want to talk about a little bit what it's been like having a luxury company operating in Paris over the last couple of years. And again, just so many things I'm interested in, especially with the brand and your role. And I know that hiring and staffing has been, of course, such a necessarily important part, but particularly challenging over the last couple of years. And I want to know from your perspective, I know you've hired people and you probably have yet to hire people. What's it like recruiting people to work at a luxury brand in Paris today? I'm sure it's a little bit different than it was 10 years ago. And I'd love to hear some, background information and discussion about the reality these days of staffing a company, because you can't just be a luxury company. You have to be, run by people who all understand the vision. I'd love to hear about that a little bit.
Yes, sure. Actually, I think that there are two things about, recruiting, like for Bell & Ross, because of course it's a luxury company, but as well, there is something pretty special is that the founders, they are running the company. And so it makes it different because it's like you're really joining, human adventure, meaning that, the two guys, now they are men, of course, they've been here for a while, who started, like the two of them and build their companies. They are still so much involved, so present, like day to day running this business. So it means that it's not, like a very big company. So for people who come and join the companies, they are really, like a part of the story, they are talking to them. They are, like involved, like in this adventure that is live and run, by the people who created it. And I think that's really a strength because, people nowadays, they are very much looking for some sense, in their work. And when you're in this kind of structure, you have a very big impact first because, when you're in a small company, each person is so key, in the organization, like each role is unique, so everybody, is really, like a key, is key in the organization. And so it's really strong impact of any people in the company. And I think that's what people are looking for. So that's, like the strengths, for, like, to recruit. And when I'm talking about recruitment, I'm mainly, talking about, like engaging, and recruiting the younger population, which is in a way more demanding, and has lots of expectation. So I would say that's, that's what is really, helping to attract people, to be, it's for people who want to live a kind of adventure, actually.
Talk a little bit more about that sense of meaning. I think that's very interesting what you said, where people are looking for a sense of meaning. What does that mean to you? And what type of meaning do you think that working at Bell & Ross can convey to people?
To me, when I talk about meaning, is the meaning is when you manage to get what you do day to day, what it does bring to the, like to the company, to the whole. And when, you are in a lighter, I would say, like structure, or smaller company, it's very easy to see, like what you're bringing to the community in a way, what to the company, what you're bringing. And I would say, that's quite obvious to feel it. And, as well, the possibility, to have this, discussion with the founders, to that can, like go and ask people things, so to really, like, of course there are some hierarchy and some people, but it's very flexible and so on. So it means that, like people feel right away, like important, in what they are doing. And I think that's what I would guess, like that's all about the meaning, it's feeling that what you do has a sense, and is bringing something.
What I've noticed about places like watch companies is that the people who work there can wear the product, right? And there's something very different about being able to interact or even own, wear the thing that your company makes or does versus most other companies where the product is more vague or it's part of a bigger service or something like that. And I'm sure you'll agree that when there's an ability to wear or dream of wearing a product that the company makes, there's a sense of understanding and of involvement in the company more so than companies that produce something a little bit more abstract, right?
Yes, probably. And actually, for me, I've always been working on products, things that are, like brought to life. and that's right. Like starting with me, it's something that has been very strong is that, you work on something and it's coming to life. You can see it live. And what you develop, you can see it live, and all you're doing, like then you can, being, like the communication campaign or whatever, like you move in the street or you pass in front of a shop and you see it live, like the communication, the product, the whole together. And that's very concrete. So probably it does depend on people, to me, it has always been something very important, to, this kind of touch and feel of, like the creation and the fact that it turns into a reality. And that's for sure, something that is very concrete, like you're right, we have, the chance, like to have awards that we can wear from the company. So you feel as well like an ambassador. So it turns, like really into something that is you're part of.
Now, I remember listening a couple of months ago. I know that LVMH sent out a letter even to Mr. Macron about the concern that traditional French craftsmanship techniques and the many people that perform these things were sort of going away. And I know that Bell & Ross isn't engaged in traditional leather making and things like that, but a lot of craftsmanship, local craftsmanship, as well as that from other places, Switzerland, of course, is involved with that. Do you notice that there is less people on the craftsmanship and design artistic side these days? Or is there actually still enough available candidates in those types of job categories?
So I think there is a change, actually. So there is, because, there is this huge dynamic, of the whole luxury, which is really a strength, I think, talking about France, because it's true that we have major, and massive, like luxury brands in France, very dynamic. So there is a big need, for people, and all, like this know-how to work on them. And it's true that the challenge is that about, like the schools and, like the fact that, like the training, is adapted to the needs. So actually what's going on now is that all these companies are creating a little, in a way, they're, the training, so that people can, can develop, the competencies that are necessary. So they are, like, offsetting a lack that there would be.
So they're training new talent now. How are they doing it? Is it apprenticeship? Are they setting up new schools?
Both.
Okay.
There is this idea of creating some kind of course, a lot of apprenticeship. That's a very good way, but as well, like some, like almost some school. It's not exactly school, but it's really, like pushing, for people to do. It's more apprenticeship, meaning that, they are going to take people and to train them, and it's over the long hauls, the long time. So, like they are doing that, but it's, and that's something that is being, like run by lots of luxury. Of course, we are small, but for the lots of major luxury companies, they are doing that to ensure that, because they need, like to have this know-how and these people and that they manage to do that. And as well, often, like the factories, or not the factories, but the place where it's being done is in, like in the countryside and, in small cities and so on. So it's as well, it's almost a political approach because it's maintaining people, in these regions.
I think it's fascinating personally. Of course, this is the industry I pay attention to, but it's you have to remember that there needs to be the raw talent for it. And I'm thinking about an issue which has actually been very common in Paris, and I call it the the second creative director problem. And what I mean by that is you tend to have companies that rally around strong personalities or built around a strong personality. But then when that personality goes away, sometimes unfortunately dies, the second creative director has a very interesting crossroads. And that person says, do I try to pretend like I'm the person who's no longer here? Or can I take the company in a different direction that's satisfying, but still feels like the same name belongs to be on the products, right? And you see that in Paris every year. There's some situation like that, isn't there?
Yes, and to me, of course it's a very big challenge. But what is key, then, is to have the fundamentals, meaning, like the DNA of the brand, the codes, because it's all, playing and recreating, both playing with the codes and turning them and bringing some creative around that and the story you want to tell about the brand. And as well, when you have brands that are old, that have a long history, to have this capability, of going back to the history and to making new stories from the stories to make it live, along the time. And if you have, all these bones, I would say, of the brand that is being done, normally, it's, it's a way to maintain, in a way, consistency, yet continuing having the creativity, because the mix and the success of the brand is to mix both, this continuity, so that, you recognize the brand, but in the same way to be very creative and to bring some artistic approach. And it's almost part of the art now, luxury brand, they are almost like in the art approach, like in the way they animate and bring the brand. So of course, I'm talking more about, like the luxury as a whole, because it's true that in the watch industry, it's, yes. Oh, actually, it's a bit of the same, actually, like it's, playing, like with old models and recreating them and making some evolutions and maintaining them up to date and creating some limited editions. So no, actually, it's exactly the same, and that's really about, and doing some partnerships sometimes to bring some, some fresh creativity and that's what is maintaining over time.
Well, and I'm so glad that you're interested in this. Well, obviously it's part of your job, but brand, I think for me, is a separate thing to build in addition to the product. And I'm fascinated by brands. I didn't formally go to school for it, but I've been working with brands for so long that I love to talk about it. And I say to companies, you have to put as much effort into building your brand as your product. The product is the thing that people buy, but the brand is what creates the desire. And the brand is like a person. It's like your friend. You have to like them. They have to like you. Right?
You're totally right. And actually, I feel, like as a person, who has been working on brand, a real, like emotional attachment to the brand I've been working on. It's like, sometimes it's like my kids, It's kind of weird because, yes, you're right. And the thing is to grow. I'm doing, this parallel with kids, because the brand, you have to nourish them, to build them, to grow them so that, they're amplified, and the products are, and then it's a two-way, with the product are nourishing the brand and the brand is nourishing the product. And the idea is that there is, like this two-way communication in between the two, so that the two strengthen over time and go and get like a stronger, bigger, like growing kids, actually, so that it becomes an adult and then epanouish. Like it's you're absolutely. I like your comparison to human, because in a way, to me, there is this kind of the development, like growing the brand, is making it become, like an epanouished person.
For me, the metaphor works well in so many contexts. For example, sometimes when marketing is too aggressive, I say, imagine the brand is like your friend. And some friends, they call you only when they want something. And then you're like, I'm not really sure if you're my friend if you only call me when you need something. But friends who 80% of the time call you to invite you to something or see how you are or share something with you. And maybe once in a while ask you for something. Those are the friends that you want to spend time with. And just like a human friend, a brand friend, especially in today's highly competitive world on social media and everything, has to have a relevance, some value to the person's life other than, I'm going to ask you for money again, right?
Absolutely. I like it a lot. I will keep it if you don't mind.
Please.
Yeah. I think, yes, you're totally right. Yeah.
And again, going to the human metaphor, and again, this is also very important. When you look at any human out there, there's some people who are going to like that human, and there's some people who aren't. That's just the laws of physics, right? You can't please everyone. And brands also need to remember that they're not in the business of pleasing everyone. They're in the business of connecting to people who are sympathetic to their personality, right?
Yes. And actually on this one, I would elaborate as well, because to me, that's really, you have a uniqueness, and that's very strong with Bell & Ross because it's, it's very unique. And for sure, the brand, is not to please and to please and to attract everyone, because it's very, it's very unique with, the square shape. And of course, it doesn't please anyone. And I think that's the strength of the brand, because people will come to Bell & Ross. There is this universe, and, all this aviation and professional background. And that's some people who are going to come to Bell & Ross. They want to, in a way, express their singularities. They don't want to be like everyone. They want to be a bit original, and it's people who are confident and self-confident, and they don't need to rely on, on the status brand, and they prefer to have the brand that is, be different, original, and for people who know it, because it's not as famous as some others. And to me, it's key to nourish, this uniqueness. And of course, it doesn't mean you can't broaden, because you can have some more people interested, but just they don't know you. But definitely not try to go and grab, all around the place, because then you are going to lose your uniqueness. And if you lose your uniqueness, you're weakening your brand.
Yeah, I mean, brands, again, people have personalities. And with that, there's things that person would say. There's things that person wouldn't say. And when you violate the expectations that the audience has based upon the brand you've developed, you can confuse them. Brands can change, but only through a retraining process. Just like a person, when they say something unexpected, people don't know how to react. And it's the same thing when a brand comes out with a product, does something, has a new visual which seems unexpected. It can be shocking, right?
Yes, and I would say, that I think when you have a brand that is strong, it doesn't change, it evolves. And that makes a very big difference. And I think to me, the key, for a brand to grow and to last over time, is to evolve, to have a continuous evolution, to keep being up to date and so on. But most of the time, the brand, we need to make, very, a change in the bracket, and it's because they are suffering. So it means there is something, that is not completely true to them, and they have lost themselves and then try to go back on track. But for, when you look at the successful brand, they have been very consistent. It doesn't mean being consistent that you don't change. It means you evolve slightly over time. You enrich, you nourish, but you don't make big changes.
Hi, this is Ariel Adams, founder of aBlogtoWatch, with a message about eBay. I visit eBay daily and have been relying on eBay to learn about and acquire watches for more than 20 years. Did you know that you can now buy watches directly from brands or their authorized dealers on eBay? Timepieces coveted by watch enthusiasts from brands like Zodiac, Laco, Parallel, and more are part of eBay's Certified by Brand program. Here's how it works. Luxury names are partnering with eBay to bring brand new and pre-owned watches and other luxury accessories directly to you. Certified by Brand includes a minimum 1-year factory warranty for watches and offers an unprecedented selection of new and used watches directly from the source, all with the peace of mind you can expect from eBay. Visit ebay.com/certifiedbybrand for more information. I want to change topics again to the topic of communication. And this is an interesting area of conflict, actually, in certain traditional elements of the watch industry. And I'd like your opinion on it. I'll explain the issue. There is a mentality that says if you try to communicate something through marketing, it makes you look weak because you don't look as confident in your product, and you should just sort of sit around and let people discover it. But now we know that there's also a reality where this strategy, which I just mentioned, might work, but it could take 100 years. And through some, clever communication, doing it the right way, saying the right messages to in the right forums at the right times, can accelerate that awareness by by a lot. What are some of the things you say to those maybe more legacy-minded people who are somewhat antagonistic or skeptical about marketing, yet obviously don't really understand how important it is to modern brand considerations?
Yeah, I think if you, yes, you're right. Like the the environment has changed a lot. There is lots of competition. So it's just, it's in a way, like this communication is just, like explaining. It's just explaining, what you are, in which way you're different, and explaining what you stand for. So it's, like just expressing what you are. And if you don't express what you are, people have to look into it, to look for something, to get interested and so on. And they might, feel interested about you, but they will never see you. So I think it has always been like that, and I think the only difference from, now, we are such in a communication world regarding to the past is just that you need to be stronger and more unique and clever because, there are so much noise around, and it was less the case in the past. And it was different, angles, although it's a bit coming back, I think, to the influence. And I think that at the birth of the brand, back two centuries ago, it was about influence. When you look at the luxury brand, that's very interesting. They were in the royal court, and that was, traveling around the world. It was international. And then, it gave, interest, over time to, the rest of the people progressively when, they started, getting in the aware of that, and the mechanism has always been the same. And it was about, giving some explaining, and as well, I would say it's about letting know, but as well bringing some dream. And it has always been about dream, and quality, dream and quality. And the only difference is that now, you need to have a more kind of stronger communication and lots of different means of communication to make 360 so that people can see you, because there are so many people around. But I don't think it has changed. It's just, it needs to be, in a way, it's probably more difficult now because it's so crowded. Even when I started working, decades ago, there were far less, communication means and advertising and so on. So, you knew all the advertising, you could sing the advertising, and now it's more of a challenge. Nobody remembers the claim and things like that. But before, there were less, so everybody knew them, and it was part, on the memory of everybody. So I think that it didn't change. It's just more complicated now, probably, to emerge.
It definitely is. But it's interesting that there's still a misunderstanding often about what a company's communication obligations are. And I call them obligations because I think that when you have a story, you must take steps to tell that story. And there's obviously various ways you have to do that, by first producing the story and then distributing the story and then attracting people to the story. But there's still is so much storytelling that is not told, necessary storytelling, in my opinion, because as you know, the difference between a watch you're willing to pay $1,000 for and one you're willing to pay $50,000 for is not the value of the metal, but it's the value of the story that comes attached to it, right?
Absolutely. And that's the most difficult part of it. And you can, when you join a company, I've noticed that, you know the brand, you would say, from a kind of, like everybody, like the level of awareness and knowing of the brand. And then you join the company and you start diving into all the stories and, like you're amazed and you say, no, it's crazy. We should tell this story to people, they would be very interested and it would completely change, like what they think. But the big challenge now, is to manage to tell this story and to have people, listening to it and to capture their attention. And that's, you're right. It's the most difficult part. But, and you can see when you have some brand lovers and, like these people, they really, know the story and they tell the story and they become the best ambassadors for the brands, these people, because they are passionate and it's all about passion in the story you're telling, and we love stories, actually. We love storytelling, from, since we were kids, we start, like with a story before sleeping. So we like, all this storytelling. The only thing is to manage to pass it through. And that's what we come back to where we were. It's like, there is very little attention and people, move very fast from one thing to the other. So managing to tell the story and first it's an art in a way, to tell the story, to capture the attention and, so that people, can join, can join, like the brand and become, but that's, that's our target. And the thing is, how to make it, and the advertising is a way is the art of communication and advertising is making like the message and the storytelling very sharp so that people get what you mean in a very short time.
So let's actually talk a little bit about Bell & Ross marketing, because I've thought to myself, what is like the elevator slogan for Bell & Ross? Like if I'm telling a new watch lover very quickly what Bell & Ross is, it's actually really difficult to do. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind is this is the design lover's watch brand. This is for people who love to take designs and themes and refine them in, as attractive and as coherent a way as possible. And for other design lovers, it's some of the most intellectual design exercises, completely extending it into our entire brand around the world of horology, even though the brand is really about these objects that you can wear. But even that's too long, right? Like, tell me, what is your short summary of the unique personality of this Bell & Ross? Because it is a very hard question for me.
Yes, you're right. Like Bell & Ross, it's a mix of design, but still, this inspiration on aviation, which is bringing, to the instruments, the robustness and, the boldness as well. So it's a mix of all of that. But it's true that it's not an easy one, like I'm still looking, like to like the line to really summarize, in a few words. But it's
hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because you have these two legs actually of both aviation and design. And, like balancing because it's a mix of both and each of them are carrying some values.
Well, I have to say this is important for me because there is a classification of watch lover who feels that for a brand to have real legitimacy, it had to start out making these as tools for the original purpose. And they give no credence to newer companies that just, by virtue of being newer, passed the era when a mechanical chronograph was, the thing for a pilot to wear. And so what I try to do is I try to say to those people, how do I make the brand legitimate today? Because the brand formed as a design exercise, being these are beautiful objects to wear. People want more of these and they want them to match their lives today. They don't want to just go out and buy antiques. Let's make more of these for people today. The origin of the brand has a different sensibility than some of the more historic ones. So I think about a story that creates as much legitimacy as, we made watches for soldiers in World War II. You know what I mean?
Yes. And you're right, because, if you look at the driver, for purchase, like the first apart from the price, of course, which is, where you want to, your kind of level of price you want to pay. But the first, like driver is the design. That's why, like the entry point is the design. When you look for, you look for a watch, that's what people are looking for. And that's what is, taking their heart in a way, because, that's something you carry and you look X time a day, So, no, in a way, to me, you choose a Bell & Ross when you want to stand out.
For me, the Bell & Ross is actually one of the most polite ways of standing out, because this industry affords people lots of, much more flamboyant or, maybe less tasteful ways of standing out. So you're definitely right. But don't you agree that there's a sort of civil diplomacy about standing out that's part of the brand?
Yes, I would say, it's in a non-ostentatious way.
Even though there's some crazy crystal watches with skulls, right? The brand has that.
They are never ostentatious. Even when you take as they're
serious. They're serious and they're collected.
Yeah. So yes, of course, because you have some that are, like more crazy but this idea of feeling distinctive, but not being ostentatious to me is, really something about, like the uniqueness of Bell & Ross. And you're right. And behind you have all this background, of this, this, utilitarian watch that is behind it, which is, when you come to the story and,
I have less experience with Bruno than I have with Carlos, but Carlos and I have had, hundreds of conversations at this point. And I've always imagined this. He likes dressing up. He's a fashionable guy, and he likes making watches to match his outfits. And he has a whole broad range of like costumes, so to say, he likes to wear. And I feel like that's sometimes part of his motivation. He's like, I like to feel this way someday. I need to have a watch to go with that. And for me, that's like, again, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to be the origin of many of these designs.
Yes and no, because, he can, like orientate, but really it's really Bruno, with, has,
he does the visual. He does the visual.
Yes, he does the visual. So of course you can have, and you're right, for instance, if you take, for instance, edition limitada for last year, like the BR5 edition limitada, that's so much of a Carlos watch, with, the inspiration, around, cigar and so on. That's definitely, it's Carlos inspiration. So, of course, you have some inspiration coming from Carlos, but as well a lot, coming from Bruno and I think that what is interesting as well, is that anyway, you need to have lots of creativity and rethinking, and always bringing some new creativity. And of course, you have a kind of line, but it's important to bring some, some outside stuff, as well to nourish that are complementary and will enrich the story, yet keeping your line. And that's, this kind of edition limitada. It's a bit apart, but yet, it's bringing lifestyle, it's bringing an interesting feeling as well, and to the brand, but it doesn't, but over time, it remains, you keep, your Bell & Ross spirit and you don't lose it. But it's interesting to have these small, sidewalks, so that the brand is not, because the challenge, and as I told you, is to have this consistency, but yet not becoming boring, you need to bring the creativity and some craziness sometime as well, with some crazy watch or things like that, that are going to as well keep the brand live. It's like when you do the parallel with people, you can be a serious person, but it doesn't mean that you are not going at some point to do some crazy things, from time to time, or to or suddenly to be unexpected and things like that. And I think that's things that is still in the parallel you are doing, with the human part of the brand.
Thank you for that. And I'm just reflecting on my own thoughts. What I like about the brand is that when Carlos and Bruno conceive a product, they they're not constrained by any aesthetic. They simply want to have a personality. For example, they'll be like, I want to make a really cool pilot watch. They can go in any direction they want to. That can mean anything, but they seem to have these sort of relatively broad briefs that they work within. And that's why I think beauty is such a big part of the deal, because I said this to people a long time ago. Maybe I'd say it differently now, but I said that Bell & Ross are very pretty men's watches, right? In the sense that they are men's watches, but there's such a focus on symmetry, the right colors, the right materials and things like that, that there's obviously a huge beauty element. And there are a lot of other men's watches that are pretty, but sometimes they're pretty like by accident or for way much more money. And that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, yes, it's going to look like an off-road vehicle. I know you're not going off-road, and it's going to look really sexy on the streets. Bell & Ross, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thought.
Yes, definitely. And that's where, like I told you, like the design and, like the aesthetic is really central, and the finishing touch, like to ensure, like that there is no room, like if it's not perfect, like it's not going to go out, it needs to be, like really finalized, perfect, and then it's going out. And so you have this demanding approach, in terms of design that is really present. And that's what you translate, into this, I don't remember the word you were saying, but it's with the aesthetic, like that is consistent.
Changing questions again, Bell & Ross over the years has released watches at a broad spectrum of price points, from just over $1,000 to, of course, tourbillons and things like that. My question is that given today's market and where you think things are going, what do you feel are going to be some of the better price points, the wiser price points for the brand? I know, of course, that's a little bit outside of your department, but obviously a big part of it is, who are the consumers you're talking to? What price points are they buying at? Where do you feel in the next 5 years are going to be some of the more important price points averages for Bell & Ross?
Yes, but actually, there is a move that has already started on the brand, and you might have noticed it, like over the past years. The brand is moving towards a higher price point, increasing as well. There is the evolution of the movement, the integration of the Kenesey movement in the Bear X5. The Bear X5, that is the Bear 05 already, is a higher price point than the Bear 03. And then you have the Bear X5. So if you look, like the average price of the Bell & Ross, it's definitely has gone up, like with, at some point we used to have some quartz, and that's, like there are a few still on the market, but, it's really mechanical now. And there is a move toward a higher price point, that is, like a whole evolution of the brand and the quality and the, like the brand that is getting stronger as well. It's a whole, like all that together, and so you're right, like we used to have, like I would say, for luxury brand, access price, and then a few very high, because you had a few tourbillons, so very high level. And then, like it was a very big stretch. And the evolution is more, like to be, let's say, between 5 and 10 K euro, let's say, or dollar, whatever, to be more, like in this bracket with still, like still with, like some, like more unique watch, higher price. But there is a slide, and that's as well going, like with the clients and the expectation, where actually, like there is a move, towards higher quality, higher hand. So it's a mix, of the evolution, like of the market, and together with the evolution and the growing of the brand as well, as we were saying, like you're growing the brand, and the idea was you strengthen the brand, is know-how, is like the quality, all this stuff, then you can go up, and that's, like the way.
So with different price points comes, slightly different customers and things like that. And each type of customer needs to be communicated to differently. With the direction that Bell & Ross is moving in, talk a little bit about some of the ways that the messaging might be enhanced, evolved, as you said, added to to support the evolving nature of the brand.
Yes, but like that's and that's where once again you have the mix of the brand and the product. And like the launch of first the BR5 and then the Bear X5 is going into that direction, meaning that you are bringing some words that are still of course the background, and we were talking like about the uniqueness of the shape and so on, but that are becoming more jewel watch with higher quality movement. And then you start having a message and a design and like a whole together that is as well more attractive this kind of population. So you're slightly like enlarging as well like the target, because the BR3 like these instruments, the time instrument really with aviation inspiration, they are very unique, but they are targeting certain people. The Bear 5, Bear X5 with an integrated bracelet that are more urban. They are targeting in a way, like they can please a larger crowd, yet, like who would be interested in a Bell & Ross, but it's broader. So it's a mix of both, like, of course, the brand expression, the uniqueness of the brand expression, but yet with the product that is as well, interesting, a different crowd as well.
Talk a little bit about the buying process. I know that for so many brands right now, they're experimenting with direct to consumer. They have been experimenting a long time. Of course, wholesale is important for many people. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a buying process that is on brand, that feels good, that consumers want to participate in. And I know that Bell & Ross, of course, is also diversified. But talk about the buying process that you want for people who are buying the product over the next couple of years. Where do you want them to buy the watch? How do you want them to feel? And how might it be different than how it is today?
Not sure it's going to be necessarily very different. I think, like what has really come, like into the buying process, is this mix of, like digital and physical, of, like getting to learn, because, like, you have all this information, on the website, and you can see all the details, the product, all the range. And then when you go, like to wholesale, like then, you will have, like various brands, not necessarily the whole range. So, like, but then you will have, of course, the advice and, like the discussion and, like, and this interaction that is complementary. Of course, we are in a way of developing our retail as well, because, like you were telling, the strength of the retail is that, of course, because people are dedicated to the brand, they can tell more about the story. You can dive into the brand universe. You have, like broader, range product, and of course it's enriching, but it's complementary, and we like we have a few like boutique around the world, but of course the idea is to still develop some in key cities and so on, because this is bringing the strength, but we don't necessarily see a very significant change in the whole process. It's really mixing and giving the opportunity for the client to get to know the brand through the different medium, and to have, like either, like the digital discussion. So of course it's to enrich the experience on the website, and to enrich the website to make it as, like as complete as possible, so that, like the person can really get to know the brand, the product, and, like have all these things. And on the other side, like still, having people coming, trying the watch, live, because you still, it's still engaging. So then, of course, it depends on countries, nationalities. The behavior are different in the different countries, and the need for, like physical is different. But it's really optimizing a bit, like the move between physical and digital, and the mix of use of both, to please everyone and to enrich it. And actually, I think we were, there is this stress over some time when digital arrived about the luxury experience. But as you were saying, the strength of the digital is that it's in a way helping to bring the story to life.
It reminds me what you're saying, and I agree with you. When you remember early on, brands had those Flash-based websites that you couldn't navigate but were amazing to look at.
Yeah.
And they really focused on these like very elaborate presentations that had graphics and cool stuff. And it's sort of what you talked about, where the experience online should take advantage of the multimedia possible and give a nice experience so that by the time you get to the retail setting, you are, most of the direction there. You're very open-minded to buying. You're willing to consider purchasing if you're treated well and the product, looks good on and feels good on you. I agree. We have time for one more question, and that has to do with where you get information to learn about what's going on with the consumer. I'm just curious. I mean, you need to know what's going on with the people who are buying Bell & Ross watches now. You want to know what's going on with the people who'd like to be buying Bell & Ross watches. Where do you go for information to learn about the types of people that are the existing clients and that you'd like to be potential clients?
Yes, that's kind of a challenge. So we have different ways, So we've done some, research, I would say, in a way, with a client base, or let's say, the people interested with the brand. There are some external research as well that are bringing, more general, information, on the behavior and so on. And so as well, and then as well, I did some, one-to-one interviews as well, with our clients, some clients, to get, because they are in direct contact as well with the consumer. So to have, to have perception, feedback, and with a few, people who are passionate about the brand, some bloggers and something like that, which are bringing as well some insights. So I try, to mix all these sorts of information to strengthen my understanding, on behavior expectation and to be more, relevant to what people expect and to orient it, in the right direction.
Thank you. I think that's obviously really important part of your job. Speaking with the people all the time is what you and everyone at brands need to be doing. It's what I do all the time. That's where we learn so much. Marie-Laure, this has been an incredible conversation. We'll have to chat more. Everyone, I encourage you to go to the Bell & Ross website. And my guest has been Marie-Laure Trichard, the Global Marketing Communication Director of Bell & Ross. Marie-Laure, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Superlative Podcast. This show relies on support from you, the audience. Please subscribe, review, and share Superlative with your friends. To get the latest watch news and enthusiast commentary, also listen to the aBlogtoWatch weekly podcast. For show ideas, comments, or business, please contact us at podcasts@aBlogtoWatch.com.